karma is it's a law of nature. Karma yoga is a teaching that Krishna gives how to become free from the reaction, even when you're doing actions. It's a process of linking with the Supreme. That's where the yoga part comes in. That's how chapter 3 begins, where Krishna is describing to Arjuna, because Arjuna wants to know, how can I go through with this battle? Because there'll be karma. I'll incur sin. Because the activity of battle means you kill people, and when you kill people, there's suffering, and that suffering comes back. I'll incur sin. And that gives many other reasons. So Krishna is explaining there's a way, a transcendental way, that you can perform action and there's no reaction. It's the soul is in bondage. Once you're in the situation of material existence, it's really difficult to get out. Somehow we got in. We can discuss that too. How do we get here? But now, once we're here, how do we get out? And one way it doesn't work is do nothing. Because if karma, activity, causes reaction, then one solution might be just don't do anything. Then you don't get any karma, and you're released from karma. But Krishna says you can't. And common sense says you can't. He says you can't even maintain your body. The body will expire. And then, that doesn't, you commit suicide. It doesn't release you from karma. And besides that, the soul is active. The soul is going to do something every moment. So you can't do nothing, and as soon as you do something, there's bondage. So Krishna gives a solution. The solution is yajna, or sacrifice. And sacrifice is you do the activity, and then the outcome of the activity is offered to Krishna, or offered to Vishnu. That's what sacrifice is. Here's a Bhagavad Gita quiz question. In this chapter 3, there's a very prominent verse that some people, if you ask them the question, what is one verse that summarizes the entire message of the entire Bhagavad Gita? Some people say comes from this chapter 3. Who knows that verse? Yes, it has to do with karma. Almost. Karma, let's try again. You know the verse? Oh. Well, if you have the right verse, you just didn't start it. Karmani evan karaste. That's the one? Ma puleshu kadashana. What's it? Okay. You know the verse too? Anybody else know that verse? Karmani evan karaste ma puleshu. Ma puleshu. Ma means not. Just like Maya. Maya. Not this. That's the meaning. Except something as existing, but it's Maya. It's not this. Not what we think it is. So ma paleshu. Pala means fruit. Ma paleshu. You're entitled to perform your prescribed duty, but you're not entitled to the fruits of your work. Very simple principle of life. You're entitled to perform your prescribed duty, but you're not entitled to the fruits of your work. So what do you do with the fruits of your work? You offer to the Supreme. And it's a principle to live your life by. That's karma yoga. We each have prescribed duties according to our psychophysical nature. You boys and girls, you go to school. That's a duty. You have mother and father, and you listen to mother and father and try to say yes instead of no, and things like that. Be respecting mother and father. So it's a dharmic principle in all cultures of the world. Anyway, without listing, we each have our psychophysical nature, and there are duties according to our psychophysical nature, and we should do our duties without attachment to the results of those duties. That's principle of Vedic culture, principle taught in Bhagavad Gita. Mahaplesha Kadachana. You're not entitled to the fruits of your work. So you have to do something. The material tendency is to be the enjoyer of the fruits of our work. Why do we work? Get some fruit. Otherwise, why do we do something? What do we want the fruit for? So we can enjoy it. It's material life. And with that, there's bondage. With that activity, there's the reaction to that activity. And with the reaction to the activity brings about a mix of things desirable, and continued journey or birth and death in the material world. Samsara, repeated birth and death. So, chapter 3 is presenting an alternative to that. Again, what's the alternative? Karma Yoga. In the language of our acharyas, they describe it this way: Nishkam Karma Yoga, or Karma Pala Tyag. That's even better. Karma Pala Tyag. Detachment from the fruits of your work. Karma Pala Tyag. How to work without attachment to the fruits of your work. Well, you have to be attached to something. If you're going to work, commonly we are accustomed to being attached to the fruits of our work. So yoga means to connect yourself with something higher than the fruits of your work. Continue with your work. Karma nivanikaraste. Mahaplesha kadachana, without attachment to the fruits of your work. So you have to be attached to something else. Be attached to the Supreme. It's a message of transcendence. That which you become attached to is beyond modes of nature, beyond the influence of karmas, beyond material creation. Connect your consciousness to the Supreme as a way of life. That's my message. Then there's stages of that. Have you ever heard the question being asked, or maybe you've thought the question yourself? Why are there so many religions in this world? You ever wondered that one? Or heard people ask, why are there so many? And there's different ways of answering that. Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives a very nice answer. That which comes from the Supreme is actually one. However, over time, how that is applied, according to the people that apply it, the modes of nature, proliferate different ways of looking at the same one. And then groups form, and then they clash with one another, and so forth. The message is one. Originally, and over time, varieties evolved by the influence of the modes of nature. Then another answer, similar to the modes of nature question. Supposing, I've heard this question asked lots of times as a sannyasi, if the goal of Bhagavad Gita is surrender to Krishna, why does Krishna present all this other stuff? Just to the goal, surrender to Krishna. And the answer is, well, some people don't want to surrender to Krishna. In fact, everyone takes birth in this world because they don't want to surrender to Krishna. Raga Dvesha Samurtina, Dvandava Mohina Bharata. All living entities take birth in this material world because they're overcome by the duality, dvandva, mohena, of raga and dvesha. They want to be in the position of an independent enjoyer. And he who is the independent enjoyer, they have dvesha towards him. They have an attitude. They have animosity. They have ill will towards he who is actually in the position of the enjoyer of everything. I want to be the enjoyer of everything. At least some of the time. I should have the option of sometimes being the supreme enjoyer. Someone else can take their turn, that's okay. We're democratic around here. But I should have my turn too. Run for office of God. I can take my position. So some persons in this world, they don't want to just do one thing, just surrender to Krishna. So what about those people? Krishna is very compassionate. Narayana is very compassionate. He gives the means for gradual elevation. He's loving. He doesn't give other options to confuse people. He gives other options. When they don't do this, then they can do this. If they can't do this, they can do that. Just like 12th chapter Bhagavad Gita. If you want to service, well, if you can't do this. And so what's being presented in this little section that I'm going to read some verses from is karma kanda. So you have a pyramid. The pyramid is everybody. The unregulated everybody. They don't have regard for regulation. They don't want to acknowledge some authority above them. So I do what I want. It's called hedonism. When I was in college, it was a slogan. Hedonism slogan. If it feels good, do it. That's the counterculture that I grew up in. And now they just, marketing purposes, they've condensed it. Just do it. So out of those unregulated everybody, there's some that recognize, well, wait a minute, I'm receiving so many things, the air that I breathe, and the light of the sun and the moon, and the nourishment from agricultural production and water, and I'm actually dependent. So let me be respectful towards those who I'm dependent upon. Let me make some sacrifice unto them. So that's the section. It's karma. There's a section of the Vedas, vast section of the Vedas. Over 90% of the Vedas deals with karma kanda. Karma kanda means that you recognize there's some authority above you. You're dependent upon that authority that's above you, and you make offerings unto that authority that's above you, because you're indebted to them for having received things from them, and you make offerings to them, and there's a procedure, a standard of how to do that, given within the Vedas, and ultimately there's a beneficiary, a bhokta of that yajna, and that's Vishnu. So first is I honor Vishnu, and then I propitiate various devas. I seek the assistance of Ganesh to remove the obstacles in achieving that which I wish to achieve. And I have a qualified brahmana that knows the appropriate mantras and rituals, tantras, and they can assist me in doing this sacrifice. So I approach a qualified brahmana that knows this sacrifice, or that brahmana that knows that ritual, and I live my life in a religious way. Karma kanda rituals. I'm just going to read some of the verses directly from Bhagavad Gita, and then we'll come back to this narration part. All of that was just to get us caught up to last night. So I'm going to read from Bhagavad Gita chapter 3. What was it? Like to look these verses up in your little handheld device. Chapter 3, text number 11, will be about 10 verses, just the verses. Let's start with 10. That's what we discussed last time. In the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods along with sacrifices for Vishnu, and blessed them by saying, quote, "Be thou happy by this yajna, or sacrifice, because its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation." Unquote. That's what the Lord said. Be happy. Have everything you desire. Just perform these sacrifices. And then, next 11. The demigods, Devan, plural, Deva and plural is Devan. The demigods, being pleased by sacrifices, will also please you. And thus, by cooperation between men and demigods, prosperity will reign for all. Next 12. In charge of various necessities of life, the demigods, being satisfied by the performance of yajna, sacrifice, will supply all necessities to you. But he who enjoys such gifts without offering them to the demigods in return is certainly a thief. Everybody knows, don't be a thief, because it's bad. You're breaking the law. You're a lawbreaker. You're violating the law. You'll be caught and punished. Don't be a thief. Make this sacrifice a way of life. The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is first offered for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment barely eat only sin. Text 14. All bodies subsist on food grains, which are produced from rains. Rains are produced by performance of yajna, sacrifice, and yajna is born of prescribed duties. Regulated activities are prescribed in the Vedas, and the Vedas directly manifested from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Consequently, the all-pervading transcendence is eternally situated in acts of sacrifice. That's as far as I'm going to read. Next 15. So, Krishna is very kind. For those that are inimical towards him, they've got an attitude, a bad attitude towards him. He doesn't feel dvesha towards them. He doesn't feel bad attitude towards them. We've discussed this morning. Whether or not, on the transaction actually leaking out the door from our side, and making sure on the medical side. Samaham sarvabhuteshu na me dvesho sti natriyaha, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. All living entities I have equal regard for. Samaham, sama, I'm equal. I don't have dvesha, a bad attitude towards others, even they may have a bad attitude towards me. I don't regard them that way. Or those that are priya, they regard me with affection. So he just reciprocates with people. So the people that have this attitude, he's very kind. He provides a means for them to become relieved of the bondage of their karma and gradually elevated. So here's how it works. There's the unregulated, and then there's those that are regulated by the codes of the Vedas, starting with karma kanda. Their prescribed duties and their ways of achieving desirable things, just as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita here. This is karma kanda. So to perform karma kanda, there's multiple elevating factors. One, it comes directly from the Vedas. And where do the Vedas come from? Narayana. So you're contacting Narayana by accepting the codes of the Vedas. Supposing I wanted to shake hands with Manasi Ganga, but my handbook doesn't reach that far. Supposing I put a stick on the end of my hand and a glove at the end of the stick, and we did one of those. So we're not directly, but indirectly. Similarly, when we contact the Vedas, we're contacting Narayana. We're in contact with Narayana. It's through the codes of the Vedas, but the codes of the Vedas come from Narayana, so we're contacting Narayana. So we're by followers, those who follow the Vedas, the rituals and the everything, they're in contact with Narayana, a little remotely, but they're in contact with Narayana. Then, second, in order to perform the rituals of the Vedas, the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas, one requires a Brahmana. You can't do the rituals without a Brahmana. And the Brahmana means, if they're qualified at least, they're knowledgeable in Brahman. They know transcendence. You contact a person that knows transcendence, you become spiritually benefited and elevated just by that contact. And third, thinking of yourself as independent, which is the way that material life is made up of. America is very fond of independence. Where Americans are firmly attached to the sense of independence, rightly or wrongly. Generally, it's wrongly. So that sense of independence from the supreme is diminished, and the undesirable consequences of false sense of independence. It's just by being situated in Vedic sacrifices. Even people may not even know what the mantras mean, and so forth and so on. You're recognizing a superior authority above you to fulfill the things that you wish to achieve. Fourth, it elevates one into quality of goodness. Passion is still there. I want, and you fill in the blank. You go to the priest that knows that particular one. Passion is still there, but goodness is increased. So all those factors combined gradually lead to more the acknowledgement of the bhokta of the yajna. The bhokta of the yajna is Vishnu. In all Vedic sacrifices, it doesn't matter, A to Z, all the different possible varieties of Vedic sacrifices. There's one universally present bhokta of the yajna, it's Vishnu. The very first mantra that's spoken in Karma Kanda rituals is a mantra to Vishnu, because he's the bhokta of it. It's for him. And the last is this similar, Krishna saying, within these sacrifices, transcendence is situated. You say it the other way. Transcendence is situated within acts of sacrifice. The sacrifice is for something worldly. I want fill in the blank, but transcendence is situated within that sacrifice. So it is elevated. And as one becomes elevated in that way, more prominent than my desires becoming fulfilled, which was initially, the prominent thing. I don't want bondage for my work, but I want stuff. So I go to the Vedas where there's these practices of sacrifice, and gradually my consciousness becomes elevated to the point of doing them for Vishnu. These, offering something unto sacrifice unto Vishnu. So then that karma kanda moves into the position of karma yoga. Because this was a question we discussed yesterday evening. What does karma yoga mean? Where at least some portion of the fruits of my work is offered to Vishnu. So then that becomes karma yoga. I work in a spirit of detachment, not for the fruits of the work, but for the satisfaction of Vishnu, making sacrifices unto Vishnu. Then, so that's karma yoga. From unregulated to regulated to karma yoga, where the interest of satisfying Vishnu becomes awakened. According to what we read just this morning, we read from Kapila Dev's teachings to Devabhuti, that sense of servitude and submission is intrinsic within the soul. It's of the soul. It's not something you need to learn, go to school and learn. It's already there. It just needs to be awakened. And so that person who is a karma yogi may, of course they may not, but they may come in contact with someone who's carrying bhakti in their heart. And if they come in contact with bhakti, then they can move from karma yoga to bhakti yoga. They may not. And so they can continue with karma yoga. And this is now splitting into two, forks into two. Let's go this way and then we'll go this way. But if they don't come in contact with bhakti, they may continue starting with sakam karma yoga for the purpose of achieving something. And Vishnu is in the picture, but I want to achieve something. That's the incentive. That's the motivation. Satisfy Vishnu and I get something that I want. In fact, I need. I feel I need in any case. As that continues, and by the regulated type of life, the mode of goodness increases, and then one starts to consider, not just this life, but after this life. And if I start to think about after this life, especially in contact with the Brahmana, I may start thinking more about the interest of the soul. It's not just this life, it's after this life and then the next life. And what is it that's going on in the next life? Well, it's not the temporary body, it's the soul within. Now, I'd like to learn something more about the soul within. And progressively that becomes Nishkam Karma Yoga. And then study of the scriptures that deal not just with rituals, but Brahman. Knowledge of that which is eternal. I still haven't met a devotee yet. I'm just like going up the yoga ladder. So unregulated, regulated, Subkam Karma Yoga, Nishkam Karma Yoga, Gyan Yoga. Then my interest may be just Brahman and merging with Brahman. But somewhere along that line of that staircase method, one may have the good fortune of meeting a devotee. And then with that opportunity, the possibility is there to then go to the top rung of the yoga ladder. According to what Krishna says in chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita, the Uttama, or the topmost form of yoga, is Madgaten Antaratmana. The mind is fixed upon the consciousness absorbed. Antaratmana. Shraddhavan, with faith. Bhajate Yomam, engage in devotional service to Krishna. Same Yukta Tamo Mataha. That's the topmost. That's the top rung of the yoga ladder. Now let's go over this way. Supposing there's somebody that's unregulated over here. Or they may be above that. They may be regulated by codes of the Vedas. Unregulated or regulated by the codes of the Vedas. And that person then gradually, by that regulated activity, comes to the position of karma yoga. Or they just stay unregulated. That person comes in contact with the devotee. They receive a Bhagavad Gita or whatever. Premananda was sharing with me, she gets really enthused about things like when student groups come to the temple and there's this audience that they just like blank slates, please write on me. And she gets to write on them and explain about Bhagavad Gita and things. So supposing this happened to me once, I was with Naranjana Maharaj, and we were not sannyasis at the time. We were in Boston together, and there was a student from a prep school. You know what that is? Preparatory school. There's public schools for high school, and then there's private schools, education. They call them in New England prep schools, report preparatory schools. Anyway, there was a student that was doing a paper on Hare Krishna. They just chose Hare Krishna. So I went and conducted a program at their school. That person became a devotee. Full time, completed their education. And they just moved into the temple with permission from Ramadev. And just a student that found out about Hare Krishna, found out about Bhagavad Gita chanting, and they did it. And they were very happy. Chant and be happy. Maybe after they lived in the temple for some time, they went back and completed their college education. But they had that training from the unregulated and bhakti. They didn't go through all that other stuff, just bhakti. They completed their education and they got their job and got married and they had then a life of devotion. It's very nice, very rewarding. So that may happen. So this is one channel, then another is bhakti. And with bhakti, then right away, so this is the distinction between the yoga ladder and directly bhakti. Prabhupada compares the bhakti process to an elevator. He spoke of the Empire State Building. There's two ways to get to the top floor of the Empire State Building: staircase and elevator. It may take you the whole day just to get to the top floor. You may have a heart attack on your way all the way up there. But they have staircase. They have to have it for fire purposes. And then you do the elevator. I don't know if you've ever been in the Empire State Building. I have. There's so many floors, they have to have like 3 different sets of elevators. One goes up to this floor, then you go across the hall and go to the next step, then you go to the next, and then you can go to the top floor. You have to go to 3 sets of elevators. Not one that goes from the bottom all the way to the top. Somebody's phone. So the bhakti is the elevator method. You just, press the button and say, I want to go to the Krishna local floor. The door closes, and whoo, you're on the topmost floor, and you walk out, and wait a minute, I'm not qualified. Welcome to devotional service. And in that realm of devotional service, because devotional service, bhakti, is very powerful, it helps make you qualified. Of course, you have to want to become qualified, not just walk around the Krishna Loka. You have to be qualified. But bhakti makes one qualified in variety. But the essence of that bhakti principle is whatever you do it for Krishna. Now there's an element of karma yoga in that also. There's another well-known verse from Bhagavad Gita. Yat karoshi yat asnasi yat shahosi jadasi yat tapasyasi kaunteya. How's it end? Tat karasha madarpanam. Do all those things as a form of arpana, as a form of worship of Krishna. You can do that in karma yoga consciousness, or you can do that in Krishna consciousness. Meaning, I can do that with the sense that I don't want bondage of my work, so I do it for Krishna, so I don't have bondage of work. And if I do this for Krishna, then I'll get stuff back. I do and I get back. It's not just do it for Krishna. There's a subtext, a little investment calculation involved. I'll give this and I'll get back that. Or if when the bhakti principle is mature, then there's only one thing, and that's pleasing Krishna. And whatever happens when your life is about pleasing Krishna, it's right in the purport of this. I didn't read the purports. We're in the material world, and it's a place of duality. This is Chicago. When I got here, I said, wow, it's really warm. Is it going to snow tomorrow? I was told, Maharaj, it's been that kind of a winter, this to that. So whatever it is now, it's going to be something else. Now it's midday, and then it's going to be night, etc. It's a place of duality. Sometimes hot, sometimes cold, sometimes light, sometimes dark, sometimes pleasure, sometimes pain, sometimes honor, sometimes dishonor. Sometimes you don't have something, and then you get something.